You bet, guys. As always, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so the Steelers play against Jacksonville. It's not an unexpected result. They lose Kenny Pickett in the game. Mitch Trubisky has to come in and has to play. So this is a hard team to read in so many ways. So where do you see where they are offensively now that they have to go to the backup quarterback and not have the starter?
It's a weird situation to be in where you honestly wonder if the backup quarterback today is better than your starter. But after one half from each quarterback, I don't think the answer to that question even matters with the way that they played. They're in trouble because you're getting, as it was, Kenny Pickett confirmed just recently from the Steelers locker room that he's going to play Thursday. So you're getting an injured short week Kenny Pickett. He had a full week and wasn't injured the prior week, and he played terribly. It was a really poor game for Pickett. Mitch Trubisky came in and frankly didn't look any better. I was kind of surprised that they would give Pickett this start just for the sake of Trubisky having experience, Pickett being hurt, and Pickett just not having played well enough for me to believe their offense is significantly hindered if Pickett is not in there and it's Trubisky. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think this leads to what you just said. It's hard to read. I think this is one of the harder Steelers games to kind of get your hands around that we've seen, largely because they have such a weird relationship with this opponent. They always play each other tough. It doesn't matter which one of them is good or bad or either or both. It's a short week game against a wounded team that is, pretty desperately in need of a win as well, which is where the Steelers are. The Steelers' record on prime time seems to override any other potential issue going into a game. And the fact you're facing a rookie quarterback on a short week that had just one start. And I don't know how much of Will Levis that you caught last week, but
he was good.
That was just a weird performance from him. I don't know what Atlanta's defense was doing. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many throws he got away with. I don't know how many of those throws were legitimately ones that he's going to be able to do week in, week out. To put the subcontext to it all, I don't know what we know about Will Levis right now, and I'm not sure if that's more of a Tennessee problem or a Pittsburgh problem. So I could go either way on this game. What I know is it's one of the shakier quarterback matchups of probably the entire season, and this really could just go either way.
Yeah, I agree. Levis did throw the 4 touchdown passes in the win over Atlanta, but it was such a strange game, and it's not as if, and I know Will pretty well, from his time here. And that's sort of what I saw here. You could see the wow, and you could also see the whoa.
There was stuff in his game. But, two of the touchdowns were clearly blown assignments. Right. What I will say is this, and this is what would worry me if I'm Pittsburgh. Without Minkah Fitzpatrick cleaning up the back end, he's already been ruled out. Wouldn't be surprised come Friday they put him on injured reserve. Without him in there, and perhaps more importantly, with DeMonte Casey trying to jump phantom routes like he did that gave up a 60-yard touchdown that ultimately made the real difference in the loss against Jacksonville, Will Levis is aggressive. If anything, we saw that because blown coverage or not, he identified DeAndre Hopkins 5 yards ahead of everybody else down the field. That's a concern if you're Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh became vulnerable to big plays the second that Minkah went down. Jacksonville didn't quite exploit that as much as I thought that they would, but KZ and Keanu Neal is not a very good safety tandem. And Tennessee might look right now as, look, we've got a deep ball. They don't know what our tendencies are going to be because we've only played one game. It was 3 days ago. They haven't had a whole lot of time to really decipher everything that we're doing. We can take some shots in this game. We can get the ball down the field in this game. That worries me. On top of that, you're going to have Joey Porter Jr. with a full complement of snaps. Not that that's, by any means worse than Levi Wallace having a full complement of snaps, but you can test the rookie. You've seen enough on him. I think Tennessee can be aggressive, and that can be, a great thing or a nightmare for any team doing that. But as a defense, if they're going to challenge you on big plays, you better be up for it, because they can beat you in a hurry, and you can end the game in a hurry, and you'd really like to do that with an injured quarterback leading an offense that just simply can't do anything and hasn't in really to any point this season.
All right, we're a year and a half into Kenny Pickett, and part of this is based on the personnel around him, so I want to at least couch this question with that part. Where is he better than when he started with the Steelers, and where has he not been able to fulfill some of the promise?
I'm going to start with the second one first. My big thing with Pickett, I really liked his deep ball. I felt he had great touch, good anticipation. He's not going to throw the ball through a brick wall or anything, but he can get the ball downfield to a place a receiver can make a play on it. I've seen overconfidence, and I've seen probably worse mechanics than what it seemed like he had previously. I'm not sure why that is, but his deep ball accuracy is not where I thought it would be come this point. Now, to throw my own couch into it, I don't know how much of that they're doing. I don't know how much of that they're able to do, and it's fair to bring that into question. But he's missed pretty badly on more than a couple deep throws this season and last season. Beyond that, his accuracy is nowhere near what you hoped that it was. And oddly enough, I feel like he's gotten worse in that regard from where he was as a rookie. Plain and simple, for me, if you knew this is what he was going to look like after 17 games or after week 7 of his second year, if you knew that this was what he was going to look like, you would absolutely not have drafted him in the first round.
Right.
And that's the problem. And I don't know how you get around that at this point. He's gotten enough time, not to flesh out fully where he's going to be, but that ceiling is shrinking every day. At what point is he going to reach it simply because he's not improving anymore? I have largely lost faith in his ability to do that. And that doesn't mean that he's incapable of doing a few good things. He's led some nice fourth quarter drives. I'm just having a tough time figuring out why it is that he can only play well on 2, maybe 3 drives a game. And it is that bad. That's not a dramatic statement. He was flat awful against Jacksonville. We talked about this after the San Francisco game. He missed badly on a couple throws. And Jacksonville might have been worse. Deontay Johnson had absolutely no reason to have not scored a touchdown on that pass, and Pickett missed him because, one, he didn't see the primary route. I don't know how that's possible for an NFL quarterback. He didn't know that was there. And then he threw it late, way behind the wide-open receiver, who clearly was frustrated with the fact that did not result in a touchdown, because it should have. And it seems like he puts a play like that on tape at least once a game, and he's done it in the end zone a couple times a game. So we talk about a team that doesn't score points, and we're blaming the offensive coordinator. So, all right, well, here's 21 points they should have had over 7 games.
Sure.
Not everything, but this is not the coordinator. That play was perfect. Johnson ran a great route. It happened the exact way they drew it up. And Pickett didn't see it and then missed the throw. It's just simply inexcusable. And I don't know how much longer it lasts. I'm sure they'll continue giving him the ball, but he's got to get a lot better. Plain and simple, he's got to get a lot better if he wants to have a career in the NFL for an extended period of time.
This is a period of time where Kirk Cousins is now out for the year. Justin Fields has been out. Pickett got hurt. Kyler Murray's been out. You start going through the long list here of guys, and you're starting to see, for example, Dobbs went to the Vikings. They made that deal. But does the league have a quarterback problem? Because they got a lot of guys that aren't playing right now. Watson's been out.
I think overall, my thought would be that this is that's a real complicated question, and it's one that you can see. But to define it, I think it takes quite a bit. My guess would be teams are really playing back. You know, there was a point they showed this from the end zone cam, and the situation clearly depicted their desire to do it. But Jacksonville had 8 players 20 yards down the field, and you look at it like that, it's just kind of odd to see the game played that way. And obviously that's an exaggerated example, but they're playing cover 2, cover 3 deeper than what they have in the past. They're really trying to limit big plays. They're cutting off the seam. Linebackers are far more really big defensive backs than they were really small defensive linemen. You know, that has shifted. I think that's given teams more versatility in pass defense, and quarterbacks are tending to not take as many shots down the field. And they happen to be going the defense's way. On top of that, I wonder, and the stats won't necessarily bear this out, but I wonder, in response to everything quarterback related over the last 15 years, you saw a rise in the uber athletic, the best athletes on the field, these 6'6" defensive ends that should be power forwards in the NBA are coming on the field to rush the passer. And they're far more successful than they used to be. They're getting a lot better. We're seeing every team has a guy that's getting 12, 13 sacks. And they're not throwing the ball as deep as often. I think some of it has to do with that. And some of it is the pass rushes are getting so good, it's limiting offense, not a huge degree. We're talking about, one more sack over the course of a game, over a season is the difference between bottom third and top 3 in the league in sacks. It's that wide of a margin. And that, when you apply it everywhere across the league, you're going to see passing numbers, relatively speaking, dropping a bit. I think it's hidden in the numbers like that. I think it's more subtle. We're not going to see one glaring example of it, but in the end of the day, I'd be willing to bet right now there are just fewer deep pass attempts than there have been, and with that, obviously, fewer completions that are coming with it. They're not trying it as much, and they're not hitting what they are trying at the same pace as they were 5-10 years ago.
To me, an intriguing team's Detroit. They play a little bit different. They'll run the ball a lot more. St. Brown is a really good receiver. To me, Jared Goff is Jared Goff, but I think it's the best of Jared Goff. When you watched the game on Monday night, what did you think, A, of them? I know the Raiders are not very good. But B, a guy that was the first overall pick in the draft and was basically thrown out the door in Los Angeles. What do you think of him right now?
I think that's a fantastic question for both reasons, because you look at the Lions right now, in a way, it's almost like after Forrest Gump's shrimp boat was out in the hurricane, happened to survive, and everyone else got destroyed. So he cleans up because of that. The Lions are built to play this style of football. They're completely comfortable not throwing it deep down the field. And defenses, we saw this with the Raiders last night, they're still playing back. They want to take away, which they did. It's like, okay, fine. We're going to run the ball a lot. In case you haven't noticed, we're good at that. If you don't want to defend us in that regard, okay, we'll roll over you all game the way they did. That might have been the least entertaining game all year, unless you enjoy laughing at the Raiders. The Lions are built to play the style that everyone else is being forced to play, I think. And it's not perfect. You mistakes early, it can be a lot tougher for that team, especially with Jared Goff as a quarterback. But at the same time, Goff is almost like what the Raiders were praying Garoppolo could have been, in the sense that we want you, here's the sheet, play these notes, okay? We're going to produce the track. This is all we want you to do. Stay within this and we'll be fine. Garoppolo can't even do that, but Goff does it just fine. He's physically talented enough to do everything that they're asking him to do. He doesn't have to win the game for the team. I know how crazy that sounds, because that's everything we want the quarterback to be. But Goff just simply goes out and makes the throws he has to make, doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot, not trying to do a ton, and they're playing well enough on defense to keep them in games, and then let a creative and explosive running game speak for their chunk plays. And if we need to, we have a great receiver we can hit the ball deeper down the field to, but we're going to run the ball. We've got a lot of these guys that can do this. We've got an offensive line that really enjoys beating you up front. We're going to keep doing this. Do you want to play this way? Because, this is our game. And if you can't, we might run you out. And that to me, that's really what happened last night. I think in a way, it's kind of a microcosm of what the NFL is turning to. In other words, you're going to see even more Lions coaches get hired this year than probably every Lions coordinator who's ever been hired in the history of the NFL combined.
Right. Well, look, he has, to his credit, Dan Campbell has his own way of going about his business, and guess what? It works for the team he has. In other words, they have a team that fits the coach, and the coach fits the team. Fair?
Yeah, it's almost, you hate to say this because obviously it's not true, but it's almost like they all did it by accident somehow.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Perfectly for what they need to do. And you're exactly right. They'll continue to do well under the way that Dan Campbell is having them play, and they don't have any problem doing that.
What happens now with Minnesota? Because I felt Kirk Cousins was really settling into being the best version of himself, and now this happens.
We saw not long before we got on this call, the Vikings traded for former Steelers legend Josh Dobbs.
Yeah.
I think that's a Band-Aid more than anything. It really is kind of a throwaway trade. The Cardinals know Kyler Murray's coming back, so with that, they don't need Josh Dobbs, and it gives Josh Dobbs a chance to go play somewhere, which I think he deserves in this kind of a situation. I felt, and not a whole lot of people would agree with this, I don't think, but I felt Kirk Cousins was playing at a really high level this year.
I agree.
The best football he has played in his career. He really was getting what McConnell was telling him to do, and it really seemed like they were starting to build with each other. I wasn't sure prior to injury. I wasn't sure if this was going to be his last year in Minnesota. All signs pointed to it, but I think they were going to make a little bit of a run. He was playing really, really well. A real tough injury, obviously. It craters their chances. I don't think they're there as a team, but there's a lot to like with Minnesota. The amount of blitzing that they're doing, the fact that their defense is coming together with that, they're kind of a sneaky, tough team to play. They've laid some eggs up to this point, but I think that could have been a real tough team heading down the stretch. With Cousins out, you get Dobbs in there because Dobbs has experience as a starter. You don't want to show that you're giving up, and you're really not. I think they're swapping a 6 and a 7, which is nothing. To get an experienced starter for your team is probably not going to have a clue what he's doing for a couple weeks. But Dobbs has that resume too. He started for teams unexpectedly mid-season before, and you wish him well. I mean, Josh, he's a good guy. He's a good player. For the path that he has taken to still be in the NFL, to still be desired enough to need possibly to start for you next week. It says a lot about the improvement in his game that he's made. And I thought he played pretty well a couple times this season. I don't think it's going to be enough to bring the Vikings to the playoffs, but weirder things have happened. I'd pull for him for sure. I think it's a great story.
Last one, I know this could bring with it a longer answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are you seeing a little more edge to comments that fans make, whether it's on a talk show or a comment section on an article, where you wonder to yourself if gambling has entered into the level of anger with the comments?
That's a good question. I would say yes, but I think that's because the situation's right in your face. I would not say the outcomes of games are extraordinarily different. I think weird, fluky things happen. I think officials make calls that we don't agree with. None of it to me, or put it this way, if there is some type of gambling conspiracy, it has been going on for 60 years, because this is usually kind of what it looks like. People that are engaging along those lines, one, I think are really late to the party. This has been talked about for decades, and probably happened far more often prior to nowadays. It's convenient. The NFL, when gambling was legalized, they went to make money on it. I don't see why that's so confusing for people, or they think that it's hypocritical. I don't think the product is being affected specifically by it, because it hasn't been legal in 49 states, but people could have done this in Nevada for a very long time. So if it wasn't happening, why is it all of a sudden happening now? It doesn't make any sense. If it is happening, it was probably happening for a long time before, and it's something that we've never, specifically found out about. I don't think anything revolutionary has happened, but I will say this: with 20 years of experience dealing with the digital space, upset fans will complain about absolutely everything after losses. So none of it is particularly surprising. You get used to all of it. I've heard presidential rulings get blamed for a team's loss before. Fans just get upset. They're passionate. They're involved, and sometimes might not be thinking, in the most rational or sober state of mind when they haul off and freak out about things of that sort.
Sir, always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
The outstanding Tim Kurkjian. Tim, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Steve. My pleasure.
Well, it's not as if the place hasn't hosted a World Series before, but this time they get the Rangers in it so instead of the Dodgers and the Tampa Bay Rays. When you look at the respective paths that these two teams took, what stood out to you about each?
Well, I was really impressed by their resiliency. The Rangers lost 8 games in a row and 20 out of 30 late in the season, and somehow pulled it back together for October, and then have played, obviously, exceptionally well since. The Diamondbacks lost 9 in a row from June in August, and from like late June until August the 11th, I think they went 14-36. That's how bad they were. And they pulled it together also. When you are facing adversity and people are questioning every move you make, and somehow you come back from that, that's what's really impressive to me. This is the first World Series ever where the two teams in it each had an 8 or 9 game losing streak during the season, and yet both made it to the World Series. It's a really hard game to play. It can really humble you, and when you get humbled and still find a way to come back and play really well, that's the most impressive part.
Philadelphia had been rolling, especially on offense, in their wins over the Marlins and the Braves, and they got off to a great start against Arizona. In the first 2 games, Corbin Carroll was in the leadoff spot. Broken bat, single right center field. Second game, game 2, led off, grounded to short. Turner couldn't make the play. He beat him out. Each time he stayed at first and never tried to steal. And I felt like, just gut feeling watching it, wow, they're tentative. And then I watched them in games 6 and 7, and Carroll's running all over the place. They're running all over the place, and they were aggressive. Did you sense or see the same thing, or is there something else you sensed about it?
No, I saw the same thing. The reason the Diamondbacks are where they are is because they're young, hungry, fast, athletic, and they take it to the opponent. Buck Showalter taught me a long time ago, when you're in October and the other team, at least in theory, is better than you, and the Dodgers, let's say, were better than the Diamondbacks, they beat them by 16 games. If someone's better than you, you have to go right after them immediately. You have to throw the first punch, and that's what the Diamondbacks did during the series in Arizona against the Phillies, and in those 2 games in Philadelphia. They took the crowd out of the game, and they had a bunch of young, hungry kids who said, go ahead, try to throw me out of here. If you do, good for you, but we're coming right after you. And not just stealing second, going first to third, the way they approached at bats, the way they pitched. They just were more aggressive than the Phillies were, and they can be aggressive because they're young and they're athletic and they can get away with some mistakes. That was the difference that I saw.
What did you think of Arizona's bullpen, especially down the stretch and in the postseason?
Well, it was really good. I mean, Paul Sewald is the closer that they acquired from Seattle. I'm still shaking my head over that one. Why would Seattle trade such a good reliever? I did the Mariners in the playoffs last year against Toronto. No one could hit that guy. Now, they had other closer options there. Munoz is a really good pitcher, but I still don't understand why you traded that guy because he had a great year. He ended up with 34 saves with 2 teams. And he's the biggest difference on that team the last 2 months after the trade deadline, as he's solidified the 9th inning. With Kevin Ginkel out there, who's been absolutely unhittable in October, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch the Diamondbacks have right now. And to me, that's the only difference between them over the Rangers is, in theory, they have a better bullpen than Texas. But I'll tell you one more time, Steve, do not underestimate the Rangers. I covered all 12 of their games from the booth, two on TV, 10 on the radio, and that is a really, really good team.
No question. And also a really, really good offensive team is Texas along the way. I mean, Seager, Garcia. When you look at the Texas offense, how difficult can they be to deal with for a staff?
Well, they're a nightmare when they're right, because they led the league in runs scored. They led the league in walks by a healthy margin. All 9 of their starters can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And every one of those guys, Young and Tavares and Garver and Heim, all of them, those guys are hitting down in the order. Nathaniel Lowe, all had big games. Maybe not all big games, but one or the other was the star of one of the games in this postseason, and that's to go with Garcia, who drove in 15 runs in the LCS, Corey Seager, who was, for the most part, great, Marcus Semien, who wasn't great, and they still won. He's due to get hot. That's what's so dangerous about this team. They have thunder 1 through 9. They can hit the ball out of the ballpark. Even though they led the league in walks, they are wildly aggressive when they want to be. They get to 2 strikes and they shorten up and put the ball in play a little more often. Like I said, this is the best offensive team in the American League, and if you catch them at the wrong time, it's really hard to pitch to.
Nathan Eovaldi, who made his postseason name in an 18-inning loss to the Dodgers in Game 3 in 2018, what has his steadiness and his mix, especially with his fastball, meant to the front of that rotation?
It's been critical. Brad Miller of the Rangers told me before the playoffs even started, he said, if I could pick one guy from our team to pitch a big game, I would pick Nate Eovaldi. He is totally nails. Now, we didn't know that because, he's never started a World Series game, but his postseason record is great. I mean, he's made 9 postseason starts. He's 8-1 with an ERA well under 3. His strikeout to walk ratio is tremendous. And his strength is he throws that curveball 76 miles an hour. He throws his split 88 miles an hour, and he throws his fastball 96 miles an hour. That is a really difficult thing for a hitter, to try to have to deal with those differences in speeds. Because if you're looking for 76, you're not getting a 96. If you're looking for 96, you're not getting a 76. And then he's got a split in the middle. And he is a wildly competitive guy, which we saw that night in L.A. when he pitched 6 innings, 97 pitches. He got the loss, and he got a standing ovation from his teammates when he walked in the Boston clubhouse after the game, because everyone in there knew he saved our pitching staff. We lost the game, but he just won the World Series for us because he saved our pitching staff from getting exhausted.
Right, exactly. Muncy finally won it in the 18th inning, but he actually, they may have won that battle that night, but Eovaldi was a big reason why they won the World Series war. So, when you look at Zach Gallen, what do you see in him that's allowed him to be a 17-game winner?
Well, he was one of the best pitchers in the game the first half of the year. He started the All-Star game. He's got great command. He's got 3 really good pitches. But he did indeed struggle down the stretch, other than an amazing 1-0 shutout at Wrigley against the Cubs. But he's not been at his best in the postseason, and it's a miracle that, you know, he pitched 2 games against the Phillies, and he didn't win either one, and they still beat the Phillies. Right. And he's their best pitcher. So what he does is he competes. He knows how to pitch. He knows what he's doing. He just hasn't been real sharp the last couple months. I fully expect him to get that back, and I fully expect it to be a pitcher's duel in Game 1 in Texas.
Who do you view as pivotal players that if they play well, they swing it one way, if they don't play well, it swings the other?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to that Texas bullpen, which has been a problem for most of the season. 4.77 bullpen ERA, 85 home runs allowed. That's 27th most in the major leagues. If Jose Leclerc, who was mostly great during the postseason, Aroldis Chapman, who was mostly wild during the regular season, and Josh Sborz, that's their threesome late in the game. If those guys do, for the most part, what they did in the first 3 rounds, the Rangers are the better team, and the Rangers will win the World Series. I believe that. However, if those guys stumble, and there's always the possibility of that, then the Diamondbacks can win this series for sure. This is an ultimate toss-up World Series, but that's what I would keep an eye on, is the Texas bullpen, because to me, that's the only weakness on their team, and it wasn't really a weakness during the postseason.
Tim, always a pleasure. Appreciate it so much.
All right, thank you, Steve. Talk to you later.